A huge acknowledgement to all protocol observed. My name is Nakubonke and my surname is Shabangu. I'm from Anton Lemere MST Academy. I'm from the opposing side to state that exactly civil unrest and protests do promote social migration. Firstly, just a quick reminder from my confidently speaking opposing group. Just to remember, my first speaker defined protest failure. We say it is another way, and they think that opposes debate, and also debate opposes. We also want to debate. Clearly, both teams account the same thing, which is protest. Second of all, you stated that the peaceful protest results in violence. Taking for the example for the protest that was made in 1756 for the children who during the Soweto uprising who were very peaceful without even having their guns in their hand, without even having their weapons. Peaceful brought the violence, still resulting in blaming the protest. To get to the example explaining how we as a team, opposing team, are coming from. Let's go to the example of cars. Cars have been made to make our lives easier, for easy transportation. Thank you, ma'am. I was still blaming cars because some people nowadays use cars for destroying other people. Do we put blame on cars? So why are we putting the blame on protest? Second of all, the mark was made by the woman that the second speaker has emphasized, whereby the colored, black, Indians had emphasized making a unity. Could they even go in the same direction for goodness sake? Even singing one song for goodness sake. Yet you're still opposing. If you still oppose this debate, you continue. Thank you, ma'am. The Soweto uprising is what made us to be here today, speaking in the very confident language we're wanting to speak to. Because of those, we do recognize the fighters who died, like Captain Peterson, but why are you blaming the protest? You blame the car. Another thing, there's a speaker number one has emphasized why the protest has been the voice for the voiceless, the power for the powerless individuals. Are you against the fighting of our rights? In this debate, if you still oppose this debate, thank you, ma'am. Another thing, that alone promote the spirit of intermovenness and the spirit of togetherness. If you still disagree and oppose with us moving intermovenness and togetherness in our society, this debate will continue. Second of all, you've misunderstood us about the tender making of how we understand the effort, a huge effort made by Nelson Mandela. We've never said we contribute to Nelson Mandela. We are supporting it. Eventually, I'm wearing this uniform I'm wearing today. You are speaking the language to speak to today because of the leaders such as Nelson Mandela. Are you still the civil rights movement and emphasized by the second speaker, social justice during the 1950s for African Americans to gain equal rights under the law of the United States. If you still oppose the debate of rights, equal rights, thank you. Another thing, as my second speaker said, a person is a person because of the right of people. So if you still oppose with our side, this debate will continue. Another thing, then if we still oppose, therefore the debate will continue. And also, they even go with the same direction as I mentioned about, placing their differences aside. As I emphasized that different races attended to the women's march that happened in 1756. I'm still promoting or still supporting that the statement that protests divide us. No. So, I'm going to just emphasize that protests are the executive one that unites us, creating awareness for the government to be aware of the issues that we're facing as a community. If you're still opposing us raising our views as a society, this debate will continue. Another thing, how do the peaceful protests promote violence? Who came with the violence during the Soweto uprising? The students were peacefully marching, fighting what is best for the country, not what is best for themselves. And therefore stating that fighting for rights, equal rights we are having today is wrong. This debate will continue. Another thing is that Nelson Mandela has brought unity to the society by promoting how we should emphasize what we want and one's unity to this country. We distance ourselves from the reality and start generalizing. You've generalized the protest as a sector of violence. No, not all protests have been linked to violence, especially the protests are the form of raising awareness and our views as we have the right to raise them to the government. And also, as a rebut, I'll also aim that the protests have never aimed for violence. Give me one example for the protests that have ever aimed for violence of change or bringing about change. You've emphasized that other protests have never been changed. We've never stated that protests have one sudden change, but they want change. We're caring for
So ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you are quite amazed by all our speakers that they are still secondary school learners, but their depth of perception, their analytical skills that I spoke about earlier, their ability to articulate themselves and listen to the opposing side and then argue. These are the things that we want to prepare our future generations for. So when they go out into the real world, they are mature, critical thinkers that are able to survive and contribute positively to society. We are now going to have closing arguments from each side. It is a 2-minute presentation to sum up the team's argument. On the side of the opposition, we have Clementine, who's going to close the argument for you. Let's give her another round of applause.
To today's conversation. One is consideration of the pain that people went through as a result of apartheid. We looked at factors that evoked the unrest that we witnessed in July 2021. And 3, we give you some practical examples of how peaceful protest has been successful over the years, right? Under a consideration of the pain we went through, we feel like we were able to acknowledge what people went through. We were able to tell you that it's not something that's going to disappear overnight, and it's not something that we can just assume that it has that people have already gotten over, because it's not the case. And we think that by allowing people to be at the forefront of their struggles is something that can allow for that closure emotionally. Second, we told you the factors that evoke the unrest. We spoke about the tension build up, right? We spoke about things like COVID. We spoke about how it's so easy for something that isn't even about race to turn an issue into something about race, and how we best address that on our case when we allow for people to publicly address it. Third, we gave you some practical examples. We told you that yes, protests, there are times when it doesn't work, right? And this is the part where we place the burden on stakeholders to ensure that it gets to a point where protest is peaceful. And we also gave you how it's been beneficial over the years. We fight for the people to exercise their constitutional rights, and coupled with this right, we place that responsibility to keep protests peaceful on stakeholders that are designated for that task, such as trade unions. If people coming together is what we want, then allow us to make sure that it is sincere and true, and they aren't being taught how to tolerate each other in order to coexist, right? This is the South Africa we live in. If South Africa is a place where money allocated for poor people of a community to get housing, better infrastructure, and initiatives that aren't inconsistent is something that we face every day, surely there should be people to oppose it. A white man once said, Amandla, and the united crowd shouted, Cohesion. I thank you.
Thank you, Clementine. And closing the debate on the side of the proposition is Shreya Ramlakan. Let's put our hands together for Shreya.
said, Africa is shaped like a question mark. It is up to our generation to find the answers. And ladies and gentlemen, today all we have seen is an opposition that refuses to engage with the answer we provided. They refuse to engage with the solutions we give them. All they tell us are these lovely packed ideas about liberation and banding together. We think that, as my third speaker has said, is not something that's mutually exclusive to their side. At no point did we say we ban all protests. At no point did we take away the civil rights of the nation of South Africa. We think they have failed in this regard. But what have we proven to you in today's debate? We think that we looked at the ways in which protests in all forms have been detrimental, or rather than saying that, can be detrimental to society we have today. We think we acknowledge the struggles, we acknowledge the success of our apartheid regime struggles. We acknowledge the change that has occurred, but we say we avoid the violence today. We think that any protest in any form is going to lead to these lives lost. It's not the best way to benefit in today's debate. More than that, we gave you alternatives of why in society we can still build this idea of cohesion. We can still have the lovely benefits of working together and banding together as people of color in our oppressed country and have that benefit. They think they're owning in today's debate. We don't think they've proved their burden in that regard. But let's look at the debate as a whole. We think that the way in which we see today's debate is we ought to prove to you why civil disobedience is detrimental to social cohesion. As we've seen throughout the speakers' speeches in our opposition, we have very little engagement with what social cohesion is. It's nice to use these packed ideas of what integration and connectedness and oneness look like without telling us practically how they achieve that. We think the way in which we look at protest in society is not as a means of opposing the government, it's not as a means of looking at what's wrong in society and doing the right thing. We think protest is the only way in which we further the issues in South Africa. As a proposition, we stand today and we plead with you to understand we do not need bloodshed. We do not need the level of severity of which we contextualize South Africa the way the opposition has. We think we are better for change. We are privileged in the world we live in. Thank you.